So every single week, I do a defensive ranking of the top 12 for each fantasy football week. And I usually do must start and sit defense ranking videos as well. And last week, we didn't end up doing the must start and sit defense ranking video. And I got a comment the other day that ranking videos are way more valuable than must start or sit videos. And I'll be honest here, I like to be transparent with you guys. I agree with you that rankings videos in general are more important on my channel because you know exactly where those guys rank. But there are some instances with a lot of wide receivers, running backs, you name it, defenses especially, where they're ranked outside of the top 12 that I think are playable. And that's the reason we do these videos as often as we can. So today I am going through every matchup of Week 13 fantasy football to find the must start and sit defenses for this particular week. And I am one of the only fantasy football YouTubers who covers defense on a weekly basis on YouTube. So please go down there, drop a like on this video, and subscribe to the channel to show your support. So let's go ahead and just start diving through these matchups right now. The first matchup we've got is the Indianapolis Colts at the Tennessee Titans. Now the Indianapolis Colts, they already were in my top 12 defense ranking video. The reason is because if you look at the past several games, the Colts are secretly, very quietly doing very well in fantasy football from a defensive perspective. Because I've said this over the weeks, they're a defense that isn't going to stop you from getting 300 to 400 yards. They're not the San Francisco defense. They're not the Dallas Cowboys defense, which, by the way, Dallas defense just got ripped apart on Thursday night. But usually they're really good. The Colts defense is not like that. What the Colts do is they get you to turn the ball over and they get after your quarterback. They're a bend but don't break defense that is opportunistic. It gives you opportunities to get fantasy points. And this particular week in a divisional matchup where a lot of things can happen in divisional matchups, I talk about this all the time. I do expect Indianapolis' defense to do well again because, to put it very simply, Tennessee's offense just is not very talented. I don't see enough upside here. Maybe Derrick Henry gets, 50 to 80 yards rushing and touchdown. Maybe DeAndre Hopkins could go off. We just haven't seen that enough this year for me to say, yeah, confidently, those guys are going to have a good game. I'd start the Colts defense this week pretty easily. And the Tennessee Titans defense, not only are they not good any week, but Indianapolis can put up points. In my opinion, it's not a good idea to start the Tennessee Titans defense. The Atlanta Falcons taking on the New York Jets is the next matchup. And I said it earlier this week, I think both these defenses are definitely startable. They're both inside my top 12 defense rankings for the week. These defenses right here, let me put it to you very simply as I can. Atlanta's defense gets the matchup. The Jets defense is actually good, and the matchup is actually not that bad. So you look at Atlanta's defense, and they had a defensive touchdown last week, and they still ended up getting not even 10 fantasy points in that game. That's really, really hard to do. Really hard. And my point in saying that is not to say that Atlanta's defense can't get 10 points. No, I'm not saying that. What I'm saying is that Atlanta's defense is just really not that good. But they get the luxury of the matchup here. And one of their best weapons in New York, Breece Hall, yeah, he's dealing with an injury right now. So Atlanta's defense to me is absolutely must start. And the Jets defense, I think, is 100% in there as well. Because like I said, the Jets defense is actually good. They're averaging over 8 fantasy points per game with an awful offense. They're awful. They're dog. So the Jets defense just is full of playmakers. And the Falcons offense is just so lethargic some weeks. So I don't think that there's any kind of fear or worry here that the Jets offense, that the Falcons offense is going to somehow overpower the Jets. I think they're both startable in this matchup. The Detroit Lions at the New Orleans Saints is the next matchup. Now, the Detroit Lions, I know that they've been very disappointing over the weeks. And I've actually publicly said to a lot of my audience, we need to taper expectations for the Detroit Lions defense. We need to kind of wean off them a little bit, and we need to let our foot off the gas and cool down on them. Because I see what's happening. I think if you need them in a pinch and you don't get any of the options I have inside the top 12 on my defense rankings, which, by the way, would be a very good video to watch after this video so you can see exactly where these defenses ranked. The Detroit Lions defense, I think, is flexible and is playable in a pinch. I don't think they're must start. I don't think that they're a high upside defense. The only reason they're on here as a potentially in a pinch defense is because of the fact that the Saints offense is giving away the ball a lot. Derek Carr he's not very good right now. He's just not. He's turning the ball over. There's a lot of issues with this offense. I think that the Lions defense, just from a turnover standpoint, could end up getting the ball once or twice, leading to a 6 to 7 point game, which at the end of the day, that's not the worst you could do. And then the Saints defense, I'm sitting them. Not only is the matchup tough against the Lions, but this defense has actually done worse and worse and worse over the weeks. And it's not because their matchups have been bad. Their matchups have been like either decent or really good. And they just haven't been able to take advantage lately. It's a problem. It's a problem for sure. And I don't want my audience playing the Saints defense this week. The Denver Broncos at the Houston Texans is the next matchup. And I think Denver's defense is playable in a pinch. They're not a must-start defense. Now, let me be clear on this. If Denver was playing Carolina, I was going to say Carolina. That's kind of an easy one. Everybody's playable against Carolina. If they were playing Tampa Bay, or if they were playing New Orleans, or if they were playing Washington, I would say start the Broncos defense. Because they've been really good. The Broncos defense has absolutely turned a corner. They've done a 180. From giving 70 points up to the Miami Dolphins to now scoring 10 points a game for the past several weeks. The Broncos defense is playable. Now, I don't like it because of the Houston Texans matchup. CJ Stroud, Tank Dell, if he plays, Nico Collins, they've got weapons on this offense. So I don't love it, but I do think that if you combine the way Denver's defense has been playing, with the injuries that Houston has on their team right now, with Tank Dell, with the bad running game, with Dalton Schultz being rolled out, there's potential upside here, but I still don't love it. And then the Texans defense, I can see a future for them in the playoff time, but I don't think it's right now. So I'm not going to say to play the Texans defense because while Denver does not score a lot of points, what they don't do is they don't turn the ball over. So there's not really opportunities to get turnovers here. And Houston hasn't exactly been one for the turnovers on defense either. The next matchup, the Los Angeles Chargers at the New England Patriots. And if you watch my defense ranking video this week, you already know we're playing the Chargers defense. They were my defense number 2 in that video. And I've gotten a lot of comments about this one. Now, the Chargers defense, I want to be clear on this. The only reason they're at 2 is because of the matchup. The Chargers defense haven't made, I think this was their first or second appearance on my top 12 defense ranking video all year. It's not because they lack talent either. They've got talent. Bosa's hurt right now, but they've still got Derwin James and Khalil Mack having a great season. The Chargers defense is here because of the Patriots. Period. End of story. That's why they're here. And then the Patriots defense, I would sit them, but I do want to make a note of something here. The Patriots defense, I can never endorse playing. They've been horrific in real life, and they've been horrific in fantasy football. I can't endorse my audience playing the Patriots. I just can't do it. But what I will say is that if you are super, super desperate, I'm talking super desperate, you're in a 16 or 18 team league, I don't think the Patriots are out of the question. And the only reason is because Justin Herbert is 0-2 versus Bill Belichick. That matters. Bill Belichick knows how to play Justin Herbert. Now, I don't think, if you look back to when the Patriots beat Justin Herbert over the years, the Patriots have been a better team. It's hard to be on the same level or worse than this team they have this year. But Bill Belichick's still a legend. And he still knows how to deal with Justin Herbert. He did not lose that memory all of a sudden. So I do think there's a potential here that the Patriots could have a surprisingly good game. But make it clear, I am not endorsing my audience to play the Patriots defense this week. Arizona Cardinals at the Pittsburgh Steelers. The Pittsburgh Steelers, I think, based on their schedule, based on how they are as a defense, I feel comfortable telling my audience that you could start the Steelers defense every single week. They average over 9 fantasy points per game. That's a good defense in fantasy football. And again, they're similar to the Colts, where they're a bend but don't break defense, but they're actually better. They have 2-star pass rushers. One of them, a Hall of Fame level player when it's all said and done. And the other one, the best number 2 pass rusher in the game with Alex Highsmith. Cam Hayward's still causing havoc up front. Minkah Fitzpatrick coming back this week. So I think there's a lot of merit most of the time to play the Steelers defense. And especially this week when I think that Arizona coming cross country against the Steelers off a bad loss, 2-10, down bad, I don't think that they're going to be much of a explosion offense. I just don't think it's the week for the Cardinals this week. But I will say that from a defensive perspective, it's similar to the Patriots, except I actually have more confidence in this one because the Steelers' offense is worse than the Chargers' offense. So I think that, again, if you're in a pinch and you don't have access to the Steelers, access to, a defense like the Chargers, the Cardinals can be played because the Steelers still can't score points. I know a lot of people got excited about a 400-yard game. If that's the bar we have set for the Steelers offense, that just shows you how minuscule, how much of a joke, and how much of a Mickey Mouse offense, as I have been saying all year, that this truly is. They couldn't put up more than 16 points last week against the Bengals. I don't see how the Pittsburgh Steelers put up 23, 24 points. I just don't see it. So I think the Cardinals defense can be played in a very, very tight pinch. The Dolphins defense taking on the Washington Commanders. The Dolphins defense, I've already said it, they're a great start this week. The Dolphins defense, to me, when you look at their past several games, they've been lights out defensively in fantasy. 20-plus point games. 19, 15-point games. That's what they've been doing the past several weeks. Now, I love the matchup here. Not because Washington can't score, because they can. And they can't put up yardage because they can. But they're actually a very turnover-prone defense. Their turnover differential is awful. Awful. So Washington, just from a mistakes standpoint and from a turnover perspective, Miami's a good play. Now, what I will say, and I said this on the rankings video, and I'll let you watch that video to see exactly where they were ranked. What I will say is that I worry about the Dolphins defense moving forward because their best pass rusher, Jalen Phillips, just tore his Achilles and he is out for the season. That matters for this defense because they're averaging over 3 sacks per game. That's not going to happen for the rest of the season here. So I will say I'm a little worried. And Washington's defense, you don't ever consider playing them. You just don't. Washington's defense, before they fired Jack Del Rio, was abysmal. After they fired him, who knows what we're going to see? I don't think it's going to be much because they got rid of 2 of their best defensive players last month in Chase Young and in Montez Sweat. It's not there right now for them. The Carolina Panthers at the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. You already know, right? You start the Tampa Bay Buccaneers because they're playing the Panthers. Plain and simple. Tampa Bay's defense is not that great. It's not a great fantasy defense. They're averaging just over 7 fantasy points per game. It's not bad. It's not the worst, but they're not great. So I wouldn't say that they're a must start, from a perspective of starting them over. I would start the Dolphins defense over them. I'd start the Chargers defense over them. But Tampa Bay's defense is just, they're just playing such an easy matchup right here. So I think that Tampa Bay's defense is locked and loaded because of the matchup. And Carolina's defense, I don't even need to discuss it really. I would not play their defense. I think that there's an off chance that they have a decent game because of the firing of Frank Reich, and I've discussed this in several videos this week. There is something to a coach getting fired and how the team performs the week following. The Raiders with Josh McDaniels. The Steelers with Matt Canada. Their offense specifically. Does Carolina play better with Frank Reich gone? Maybe, maybe not. Bottom line is I'm not trusting them, and I'm not telling my audience to put your trust in the Panthers defense. The 49ers at the Philadelphia Eagles. I know this one caught a lot of people by surprise. The San Francisco 49ers, I think you could play them. I'll explain it again. The reason I like the 49ers defense low-key this week is because the 49ers defense is healthy right now. They're balling right now since the bye week. They're fresh. When you watch this team play, and again, this is why it's so important for a fantasy football YouTuber, analyst, to watch football. I love the game of football, and it's easy for me to sit and watch all day because I love the game. And I pick up on these things because the 49ers defense looks fresh. I'm not saying that they're a top 5 defense this week. That's not what I'm saying. They're playing the Eagles. The Eagles are not going to let them just trample over them and allow 3 points. That's not what I'm predicting here. What I am predicting is that when you look at the 49ers defense and how well they've been playing out of the bye, combined with their offense and how well they've been playing, I think the Eagles are going to be playing a little bit of catch up here potentially. And the Eagles still have a negative turnover differential because Jalen Hurts has thrown 10 picks. I love Jalen Hurts, but he's been throwing picks this year. And I think if San Francisco can keep a cap on the points here and get a turnover or two, they end up having a decent defensive performance in fantasy football. I feel not confident at all, vice versa, in the Eagles defense. I can't tell my audience to play the Eagles. It's not because the Eagles defense is bad. Obviously, they're not. But like I just said with San Francisco, the way they've been playing out of the bye, not only do they look fresh, they look like they're on a freaking mission. They're hungry. They're hungry, man. They're hungry. They're a hungry offense, too. They're motivated. They're energetic. They're playing well. Everybody's healthy. I don't see a world where the Eagles stop them for 12 to 13 points or 14 points and get a turnover too. I just don't see it. I would sit the Eagles defense. Cleveland Browns at the Los Angeles Rams, the next matchup. And I'm starting the Browns again. The Browns I'm starting just simply because they're a great defense. Now, Myles Garrett, his injury is a concern. He did have a shoulder issue and he's considered day-to-day. So even if he ends up playing, he's probably not going to be 100%. That's a problem for sure. And that will cap the limit of Cleveland's defense. I know it's tough to play a defense that you are a little bit worried about from that sense. Like when their best defensive player is done and they've gotten a quarterback to help them, it's tough. But the Cleveland Browns defense has been so consistently great in fantasy football. I'm not going to get scared off against the Rams, who they match up very well against, because the Rams don't have an offensive line and the Cleveland Browns pass rush is very good. I think Cleveland is a lower tier play, but I do think that they're playable. And the Rams defense, I will consider them in a pinch a decent play. Now, I got a comment earlier this week about how dumb I was for not ranking the Rams inside my top 12. And I could actually see a little bit where they're coming from. If you don't pay attention to fantasy football and scoring on defense on a weekly basis, I mean, this is what I do. I pay attention to scoring on a weekly basis, and good defense in real life doesn't necessarily translate to a great defense in fantasy. The Rams kicked the you-know-what out of the Cardinals last week. They only allowed the Cardinals to get 14 points. You know how many fantasy points that amounted to? It amounted to 5. 5 fantasy points for the Rams last week. It's just not there. The Rams have been one of the most horrendous defensive teams in fantasy football. So I'm just telling you exactly what's on paper here, what is measurable, what we can measure here. So even if they take on a backup quarterback, Joe Flacco, who hasn't played all year, the Rams defense hasn't showed any upside whatsoever. I'm not endorsing my audience to play these guys over a defense like the Cleveland Browns. I'm just not doing it. I think if you're in a pinch, they're a viable option, but I'm not saying to go out of your way to play them. The Kansas City Chiefs at the Green Bay Packers, the Sunday night game. I know the Chiefs screwed a lot of people last week. Trust me, I heard all about it this week in the comments section. Got plenty of comments saying they'll never forgive me for telling them to play the Chiefs defense last week. And you know what? I have a whole segment committed to what I got right and what I got wrong for every single week in fantasy football. I've got no problem admitting when I'm wrong. I'm not always going to be right. But what I will consistently say about the Chiefs defense specifically is you look at the history of how they've performed this year. In fantasy football, they're a top 5 defense. They've been excellent in fantasy. Now, even last week, if you watch the game, their defense performed pretty well. They just weren't great from a fantasy perspective. their defense is not some slouch. I don't want people to go too overboard and too crazy with dropping the Chiefs defense. This is a good defense right here. And I've said it over the week. I know that Jordan Love's been playing better. I think that Jordan Love is about to get a reality check from the Chiefs defense, who is actually really, really good. That's what I think personally. And then Green Bay's defense, I just can't see starting that defense. Even though they've been a little bit better over the weeks, I can't see starting their defense, who I'm not confident in, against the Kansas City Chiefs. Even with a lower offensive ceiling most of the time, I can't see that right now with the Green Bay Packers. So I'm not playing them, and I'm not endorsing my audience to play them. And the last matchup of the week, the Cincinnati Bengals at the Jacksonville Jaguars play the Jags defense. If they were playing Joe Burrow, it would be a much different story. They get a huge break, and Joe Burrow's not there. They're playing Jake Browning, who put up 10 points against the Pittsburgh Steelers defense last week. And I think you can make the argument that the Jags defense, in a lot of ways, is actually better than the Pittsburgh Steelers defense. Maybe not in turnovers, but I think their secondary is better. They get after the quarterback almost as much, and they limit you to less yards. So I think you could argue that this defense is a better matchup against the Cincinnati Bengals, actually. I think the Jags are a smash play this week. The Bengals, I think the exact opposite. There's no way I'm playing the Bengals defense, or any way I'm telling my audience to play them, because the Jags offense, they're rolling right now. Trevor Lawrence is rolling right now. Travis Etienne could absolutely have a massive game. They're healthy. They're ready to go. They're rolling. Cincinnati Bengals are trending in the exact opposite direction. Do not play the Bengals defense. So let me know what questions you need answered before Week 13 fantasy football in the comments below. And if you're looking for the top 12 kicker rankings for Week 13 fantasy football, click on this video right here.